Have the courage to interrupt when you talk to yourself. You're not crazy. You know, you're not crazy. I'm a professional psychologist, and I want to help you learn how to interrupt the voices when you talk to yourself in your own head. There's one specific thinking tool I'll share with you right toward the end that could change everything. I've been reading a book the last few weeks called Limitless by Jim Quick. In this book, he points out that we all have an inner critic. Are you familiar with your inner critic? The one that says, I don't think you've got this, or you're not good enough, or whatever that inner critic keeps saying to you. Now, as a professional psychologist, I do trainings on communication. In fact, if you want to get the communication cheat sheet, go to the URL on your screen right now, drpauljenkins.com/communication, and I will set you up with a PDF copy of what I call the communication cheat sheet. In that communication cheat sheet that I promised to send you, we go over the rules of communication. We're going to break those rules today. Okay, because the most important time to break the rules of communication is when you talk to yourself. One of the rules, for example, is to listen more than you speak. Now, normally you can see why that would be important in a communication. But when it's self-talk, maybe we should start talking more than we listen. It's the listening that gets us into trouble from time to time. When that inner critic kicks in and says we can't, or we're not good enough, or that something's wrong with us. Why are we listening to that? Let's interrupt that voice and do it in some very intentional ways. Sometimes when I'm teaching people about self-talk, there's a reference back to the old cartoons. Do you remember the cartoons with the little shoulder devil and the little shoulder angel? And they're both trying to get your attention and tell you what you should do next, or suggesting things to you. That's what I think of when I think of self-talk, the little shoulder angel and the shoulder devil. Who's the enemy? Think about this for a minute. And who are you? See, in that analogy, you've got these little dudes on your shoulder. You're the one in between that's listening to the two. Let's be really clear about this. You are not the enemy. The enemy in this analogy would be the little devil, right? That's the enemy. That's the one that's trying to get you to do things that are not in your best interest, or that will get you hurt, or that will end up in you feeling misery. The little angel is your ally. That's the one that's trying to get you to do things that are actually in your best interest, or that will bring about joy and good outcomes for you. And you're the one in the middle who's listening to or responding to each of these. That's why we're going to break the rules of communication that I gave you in the cheat sheet. We're not going to listen more than we talk. We're going to interrupt those voices and take charge. Here's a little disclaimer, because I don't think the voices are ever going to go away completely. I think we'll always have them. And have you noticed this about the world? There's opposition in everything. Opposition meaning every up has a down, every in has an out, every light has a dark. There's opposition in everything. That includes in your own mind. Don't be surprised that these voices continue. We just don't want to listen to them too carefully. I have a little puzzle in my office that is a representation of an ancient Taoist symbol called yin and yang. And you've seen this before with the two opposing parts, and they fit perfectly together, and they define and complement each other. It's not a bad thing that there's opposition in this world. In fact, it's an essential thing. And without opposition, we wouldn't be able to define anything very effectively. So let's accept that and realize that's part of the deal. I told you I'd share with you a really powerful tool. Before I get to that, would you just take a moment, if you like this kind of content, if it helps you, hit the subscribe button. I'm working for you. Put me to work for you by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification bell as well. Now let's get to those powerful tools. The first one is a psychological tool that I call metacognition. I want you to be aware of this because it puts us in a whole different position related to our thoughts. Metacognition, first of all, that's a made-up word. Okay, we make up words in psychology. It makes us feel smart. And so we keep doing it. If we break it down, cognition means thinking. Metacognition is a higher level. It's thinking about thinking. Now be careful with this. You can hurt yourself, all right? And it'll drive you nuts sometimes, but notice that you can do it. You can think about your own thinking. This is really good news because metacognition creates a little space. And in that space is where choice exists. Until you see it as a choice, it's not. So it's really important to turn on our metacognition and think about our own thinking. One of my favorite philosophers is Eckhart Tolle. In his book, The Power of Now, he shared an experience that he had as a young man when he was experiencing suicidal depression. And in this state, he had a thought. Okay, now think about what you've already learned about self-talk and the angel and the devil and everything else, okay? And he had this thought of, I hate myself. Pretty common thought for someone who's in a suicidal depression. But then he had another thought that saved his life. And the next thought was, wait a minute. Who is this I that hates me so much? And who is this me that I hate? And it blew his mind and saved his life. He had an experience with what I just introduced you to, metacognition, thinking about our own thinking. And instead of just listening and believing every voice that we hear in our head, he stopped and he questioned it. Wait a minute. Who is this I that hates me so much? And who is this me that I hate? That's life-saving because he is the one in between. You've got the voices on either side. You're the one who gets to hear them, discern them, and make some choices, which leads to the powerful tool that I promised to share with you. Wendy Watson Nelson wrote a book called Questions. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. This brilliant lady correctly identified a discernment tool that we can use anytime we hear the voices in our own head. This is how we're going to interrupt the voices. And like Eckhart Tolle, we can say, wait a minute, and then use this tool. The tool that Wendy shared in her book was, which agenda does this support? Now, it's a question. It's an important discernment question. Let's say that you hear that voice in your head saying, I hate myself. Which agenda does that support? Now, what do we mean agendas? Go back to the devil and the angel example that I shared earlier. If you've really got those little angels and devils on your shoulder, what are their agendas? What's the devil's agenda? Destruction, misery, pain, suffering? Okay, we clear on that? What's the angel's agenda? Happiness, peace, love? Okay. I hate myself. Which agenda does that support? Pretty clear? Yeah, that's the enemy. And notice that there's a third agenda here. We've got the devil, we've got the angel, but what about you? What's your agenda? What if we really nailed it down? What do you want? What is your purpose? What's your agenda? Joy, peace, happiness, love, right? Notice we got 3 voices here, 2 agendas. Which agenda does this support? That is a powerful discernment tool. We should interrupt our self-talk and like Eckhart Tolle will say, wait a minute. Which agenda does this support? This thought that I'm having, this line of reasoning that is going through my head right now, this noise, the chatter, which agenda does this support? And that way we can get really clear. Let me return to something that I said earlier. You are not the enemy. In fact, you are the hero of this story. And the voices that are going around in your head are probably going to continue, and sometimes they're louder than others. Let's just interrupt the flow. Wait a minute. Which agenda does this support? I hope you found that helpful. If you don't have a coach yet, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, I'll do that for you. Come over to Live on Purpose Central. The website is go.liveonpurposecentral.com. I got your back. Let's do this together.